Okay, so welcome. So we are here today to learn about how to get a book deal with a publisher with friend and colleague Randy Peyser?
Peyser.
Peyser. I knew I was about to say it wrong. Randy Peyser. So Randy Peyser helps people get book deals with literary agents and publishers. She edits, she ghostwrites books, and she pitches manuscripts to literary agents and publishers. Her clients have been featured in Oprah Magazine, Time Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, USA Today, bestseller lists within these magazines. I didn't read that correctly, but you understand. And on Hallmark TV and Daily Mail TV, her author's books have been sold nationally to big box stores and airport bookstores, have been featured in other prominent media outlets, and a number of them have won prestigious awards. Randy also places books in 5-star luxury hotels and national magazines, and her company is author1stop.com. I'm going to go ahead and just paste that information right there in your chat box. You can visit her website. It's such a pleasure to have Randy here because not only is she an expert in the publishing world and understanding this world that is a mystery to me, but the fact that she is an editor, she is a ghostwriter, she understands the ins and outs of the whole book project. So if you have a book in you, you are in the right place. So without further ado, we're just going to give a warm welcome by blowing her a kiss to Randy. Mwah. Welcome, Randy. It's so wonderful to have you.
Very sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the floor is yours to teach whatever you want to teach, and then we'll open it up in a little bit here for Q&A, or you can weave Q&A in as you like, Randy. But the floor is yours, and I'm available if you need anything.
Great. There's a feeding frenzy for the publishing industry in this country, and it's called Book Expo America. And it takes place at the end of May every single year. This coming May will be my 19th year of going to this show. And this is where I go to get book deals and to get promises of consideration for when a project is ready. So a book doesn't even have to be ready. Not one word has to be written. I just have to be able to pitch it really strongly to get these promises of consideration. So I make appointments with top agents and publishers. And these are people that I have 18 years of relationships built up with. So I'm able to get to a lot of people that most people cannot reach by themselves. So this past Book Expo America event, I had 24 meetings in 2.5 days, pitching 18 projects. And it was hugely successful, as this show typically is for me. And so I just want to share that some of the things that I heard at this year's show. It seems like every year there's a special buzzword on the show floor as to what publishers are looking for. They may not communicate that buzzword to one another, but all of a sudden I start hearing it from different people. So the buzzword that I heard this year that I've never heard before, and a number of publishers said this to me, they said, we're looking for titles and books that are outcome driven. And one publisher gave just a very brief example of like acupressure for anxiety. There's an outcome that's implied in the title. The person a potential reader doesn't have to hunt to figure out, or in their brain to figure out, what is this book about? Because if your book is going to sit on a shelf, on a bookshelf in a Barnes and Noble, and you have some really cutesy, witty title, but it doesn't really tell the reader what your book is, they're going to skip right by it. So if you're writing nonfiction, then it's really important that, at least right now in today's market, if you want to get that book sold, please have an outcome that's positioned in your title. So I think that's just like a really, really crucial point. Can I see by a show of hands, since we can do that, who's writing nonfiction? So we have 3 nonfiction people, any fiction people. So right now what I see is all nonfiction. Okay, great. Um, I'd love to hear if
It
you're
looks
actually,
like there's a couple fiction.
oh, they're writing fiction too. Okay. Requirements are different for fiction than they are for nonfiction. It's typically much easier for me to get book deals for nonfiction. However, I have two books that have just come out. Let me think about this. Yes, I have two that just came out in October that were both fiction. One is a paranormal fiction that it's actually based on a true story. It's called Mittens. And I pitched this book, got a book deal in 1 week. It was just like perfect publisher. They did a stunning cover for this book. I looked at the cover and I went, oh my God, it looks like a New York Times bestseller. And it's actually based on a true story about a women's college dorm in Rhode Island where the dorm burned and some of the students, the women students, died in that fire and still haunt the place. And so that's what that book's about. Then I had a fiction, a middle grade reader called Red Stocking Society, which I also hold high hopes for, and it's going to be pitched to Disney and other film entities. And it's a phenomenal, just wonderful Christmas story. So those are the fiction pieces that I currently have just had publishing deals where, I mean, they just got published. I have a lot of fiction under contract with agents. Typically, I will take fiction to agents to see what kind of deals they can do. But fiction is a tough, tough sell. It's just much harder to get a book deal than for nonfiction. Fiction requires a synopsis. So when I submit something, I have a really cool synopsis that goes with it, sometimes graphically designed to really enhance it and give a real flavor for the story. Because I'm always thinking, like, how can I tip the sale in your favor, whether it's fiction or nonfiction? And so sometimes graphics is really important for fiction. Now, let's see, what else can I tell you about fiction? Werewolves are out, vampires are still in. It's interesting about sci-fi. I was speaking recently for a very large writers organization, and this woman came up to me afterward and she told me she's an editor, a continuity editor for Random House. And she told me that for the next 5 years, Random House is not going to be buying sci-fi because in fiction, the trend is not there. The fiction trends definitely in thriller is very, very strong. So that's probably the strongest category for fiction that's happening right now. So, I asked this gal, here she is, she's a continuity editor, and I've never heard that term before in 30 years in the publishing world. And so I asked her, what is a continuity editor? And she said she works on books that are in a series, often 10 books or more in a series. So if a character is 10 years old in the first book and 10 years have gone by into the second book, but the character's now 30 years old, there's a discrepancy there. So she told me on Game of Thrones, any Game of Thrones fans here? I love it. Anyway, on Game of Thrones, there are 37 continuity editors tracking 114 characters. So I thought, wow, that's quite a book that George Martin has written. So let me speak about nonfiction just a little bit. All nonfiction requires a book proposal. And a book proposal is really the key to selling the book. And it's a business plan, I'm going to put that in air quotes, a business plan in which we're proving the sale of the book. So what's important in this book proposal? I'm just going to very briefly run through the sections. There's a cover page. Now, a lot of people are just going to put their name and their address, their contact information on the cover page. But I have my own secret sauce because that cover page is prime real estate. And if publishers are getting 10,000 submissions a year or more, which one publisher told me he gets, that's a lot of submissions. And they're not going to be reading through every single proposal. They have to be captured right from page 1. So on that cover page, since that's your prime real estate, underneath your name, so there's like title of the book, then there's your name. I want to put something there that's absolutely going to grab that publisher to say, oh my God, I must read this. So what can we put under there that is going to tip the sale in your favor? And so that usually has to do with publicity. Not always, but usually. If you have a publicity platform, and platform is the big buzzword in the publishing industry, it means eyeballs. Where are you seen? If you have big social media numbers, or you're associated with best-selling authors, or you've already done TV appearances and you can put a bunch of logos, as seen on or as featured in, those are the kinds of things that are going to tip the sale in your favor. If you don't have those connections, I also help people to leverage other people's lists. So you might not have a big following, but hey, Jessica's got a big list. And, there's a lot of people that may be willing to jump in and support you. And I usually don't do the cover page until I've completed or helped people complete their entire proposal, because then I'm going to pull something out that's so strong, I know it's going to get them reading your proposal. So there's a cover page, there's an overview. What is this book about? In that first paragraph, what I want you to write, if you possibly can, the title of your book. Start your first sentence like this. Title of your book is the first book to. If you can answer that question right up front, so somebody's incredibly clear about what your book is about, and the first point of contact is typically a person called an acquisitions editor. This is the person who's going to look at this and go, ooh, I see potential in this. I'm going to read this, or I'm going to read a part of this. And of course, they're going to start going through that proposal very, very, very quickly to see if it has certain components that they want to see. So definitely start your proposal with, this is the first book to, or, title of your book is the first book to, because that's going to open doors for you. So how do you determine if this is the first book to? Because you may not have that information. There's another section of the proposal called About the Competition. And think of a keyword related to your book. Jump on Amazon, plug in that keyword, and see what comes up. Find the most recent book you can find that's through a traditional publisher, not through CreateSpace or Lulu or some other self-published or hybrid source. Find a book that relates to yours. Copy and paste their editorial text. You'll find it about 3/4 of the way down the page. Just keep going down the page. So you're going to write down the title of their book, the year, the name of the author, the year, and the name of the publisher and the year of publication. You don't need the specific date, but just at least the year. And if you can find one great resource, one great book that's pretty current, at the end of an Amazon listing, you know how it says people who bought this book also bought? Well, guess what? There's more books for you. So you can start looking at those. So there's a couple things you're going to do with this information. One is that there is a section in the proposal called About the Competition. And so you're taking their text. You don't have to read all these books, but you're taking their text in the first paragraph and saying, the title of their book is about blah, 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 blah. And basically you're copying and pasting. And then in the second paragraph, you're going to write, however, my book, and then you're going to show how your book stands out and how you're bringing something new to a conversation. That's one of the most powerful positionings that you can do. And if you hear crying in the background, my cat is meowing to get out, but he's staying in the room with me, just in case. Sorry, Merlin, you got to stay in, buddy, just for now, baby.
You hear him.
Yeah. So it's twofold. One is you're going to find out if your book is the first book too. And so you can get your unique positioning, because if you can bring something new to a conversation that's already happening, that is a really good positioning for your book. Now, one of the things that's very interesting is that some years ago, a publisher approached me out of the blue, and they wanted to buy a bunch of my interviews. And there were interviews I had done with a lot of New York Times bestselling authors like Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Carolyn Mace, John Gray, Neil Donald Walsh, and a long list, Marianne Williamson, Carolyn Mace, all these people, a lot of bestselling authors, because I was working for various Mind, Body, Spirit magazines for many years as either a chief staff writer or editor-in-chief of a national magazine. So I had all of these articles, and I kept the rights to all of my articles. And so here, this publisher approached me, and they wanted to do a book of all these Q&A interviews I had done with all these best-selling authors. They did a gorgeous book cover, but the book never got launched because they contacted the Barnes & Noble book buyers, and the book buyers said that bookstores are the Q&A format for interviews do not typically sell. So they wouldn't take the book. So the book actually never got published. But still to this day on Amazon, it says, the cover is there on Amazon, and it says, people who bought this book also bought. Book never came out. So the whole thing about Amazon, all of those people who also bought, it's all algorithms. It has nothing to do with sales. Just a little side note. So the proposal, you've got the competition section. Here's one more important thing about this section. When somebody posts their own editorial review for their book, you know it glows. So what you want to do after you copy and paste their glowing review, their glowing editorial, you want to downplay their glow and build yours up. Your book has to glow more than theirs. Take out all the adjectives that they use, simplify it as much as possible, just tone it down, because we want diminish their glow and build your glow up. And so this is a critical piece for the book proposal. Another really critical piece is your promotions section. And every publisher has asked me, and so now I know I have to include things like this. They're going to ask me, where are you speaking? What is the size of each audience? Where are you speaking in the next 6 to 12 months? What is the projected size of each audience? So what I tell people, and they're going to ask me for what are your social media numbers? It's the first thing out of their mouths. 20 years ago, nobody even mentioned social media because there wasn't any. But now it's absolutely critical that you develop your following in one or more platforms. And what I tell people is find the place where you're the most comfortable and you're actually going to do it. Because if it feels like a chore, you're not going to do it, or you're not going to stick with it. Some people, if you're very verbal, get on YouTube or LinkedIn, or Facebook, whatever. Communicate to your audience via video. You know, if you're a writer, you're blogging, something like that. But build your numbers. Publishers have also told me, because they will look you up. I was sitting and talking with a top agent. He's working with Angelina Jolie on TV deals and movie deals. So I'm sitting with this agent, and I'm pitching a book to him just this past May. And in the middle of our conversation, while I'm mentioning the author's name, he pulls out his phone. He pulls out his phone right in our meeting and starts Googling the person's name on YouTube. Starts looking, going, oh, wow, he doesn't have a really big following. And I said, well, let's look at his Facebook numbers, you know. So they are Googling, they're searching. And it's like one of the first things they're going to do. I had a contract that was about to be offered for an author some years ago. And the publisher looked up the author, just did a basic Google search, and found out this man had a lot of litigious issues. He was suing this person or that person. And she's going, I'm not going to touch this book. It had nothing to do with his book. She loved the book, but she wasn't going to touch it. So they are searching you online. Another thing that happens is that I have agents on my Facebook, and they'll be commenting on my cat pictures and everything else. Nobody knows they're agents, but I do have, people, because we have 18 years of relationships. We have friends, a lot of, friendships that are built over the years. Now, I was pitching a book 2 years ago at this book expo. Phenomenal memoir, absolutely phenomenal. And agent picked it up. And in fact, in the meeting, I met with her on a Thursday at 9 a.m. and she said, I have a meeting with a HarperCollins acquisition editor at 11. Can I take it? This was for a self-published book. And it's tough to sell self-published books to publishers. But I knew this one it was the right configuration, and I really felt this one would go. And this agent was so excited about it. She asked if she could take it to a meeting with HarperCollins. Of course, I said yes. Later on in the day, she texted me, and she said, "Can you drop one off for so-and-so at St. Martin's Press?" You bet I can. And, right after the book expo, she signed the client. So, but it was interesting because there was another project she was interested in. And I sent her the project when it was ready after the book expo. Never heard from her. Now, this is somebody I have a really great relationship with. I emailed, followed up. I called, followed up. Nothing. I see her at this past year's show in May, and I said, her name is Paula. I said, "Paula, what happened? You told me you were interested in this manuscript. When I reached out to you, I never heard back from you." She said, "Randy, I am inundated. I can't keep up with my email. I'm not really keeping up with my voicemail. When you've got something for me, text me." So and she's not the only one. I mean, I can text agents. My query, because like most people, woohoo, Ursula's going. So yeah, like most people, you have to write a whole query letter, all this stuff. I might write a note that says, "Francesca, I've got a hot one." I mean, that's what happens with so many years of connections in place. So there's many other sections to the book proposal. What I'd really like to do is open the call to questions, because otherwise I could really go on for a very long time, but I want to be able to address your specific needs.
And Randy, I'll let you guide this. Maybe if people raise hands, I'll put it in the gallery view so we can see everyone. I'm going to keep everyone muted, and then they can just unmute themselves when you call on them.
Okay, let's see. Kat, you have your hand raised. Why don't you start? Unmute yourself there, and the unmute button.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
There you go.
Great. So really quick, I just wanted to ask if you would expand on the comment you just made that it's tough to sell self-published books to publishers.
Yes.
I am thinking of self-publishing, and I've heard this before because I've also heard of friends who wanted to get a book done, but then the publisher basically locked it up as they have the right, but then they never actually published it, and it was terrible because they couldn't put it out themselves, and the publisher didn't follow through. So can you say more about that?
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare situation. It's so much easier for me to sell a book before it's self-published, because once a book is self-published, the publishers will jump on Amazon, and they have something called the Nielsen ratings, and they're going to look up your sales for that book. And if your sales are not strong, then you're a bad investment in their eyes. And if they are strong, they're going to ask me, who does she have left to sell it to? So for example, the book that was self-published, I was able to get an agent contract for. Even though it was self-published, the author is going to groups of people, and she is selling 100 books a month repeatedly, month after month after month after month. So she's doing book clubs for books appropriate for book clubs. So she already has a strong track record, and she's consistently doing it. So that was a great configuration. So the publishers will ask me, when did the book come out and how many copies have sold? And if your numbers are too small for them, then sorry, I had an agent about 7 or 8 years ago who said, "Randy, it's all come down to publishers sitting with their calculators, and they're comparing your numbers to someone else's. So provided they really think the topic's going to sell well, they're looking at numbers." And so what kind of numbers are they looking for? Some publishers are publishing quarterly, half a year, or once a year. Sounds true. One of the biggest Mind, Body, Spirit publishers, they told me that they look for an author who they believe will sell 15,000 books over a 3-year period. That's a lot of books. Now, Sounds True has a mailing list they have a 1 million person mailing list. We like Sounds True. but you have to be able to show that you have a larger platform to get Sounds True, for example. So does that answer your question well? Yeah, so when I hear somebody wants to self-publish a book and I really feel like I can sell it, I'm like, please, would you consider? And let me share, I like self-publishing and I like traditional publishing for different reasons. I like them both, and I've done both with separate books that I've written. So my first book, Crappy to Happy, it It was featured in the movie. It's great. No, you should be laughing. It's funny. Julia Roberts holds it up in Elizabeth Gilbert's movie, Eat, Pray, Love. There's a bookstore scene in the first 15 minutes of the movie, and Julia Roberts is holding up my book, Crappy to Happy. That most likely would not have happened with a self-published book. And I see all kinds of magic and miracles that happen when somebody has a book that comes out through a traditional publisher. The media also respects traditional publishers more because the books are vetted. So if you're somebody who is using a book for a career, definitely try for a traditional publisher. I had a book that came out called Finding the Wow. And it was a woman in around Lafayette, California, MJ Margraf. And she and her two women friends were bored housewives. And they decided to take back the dreams they'd left behind. So they formed a group called the Chicks in Charge. And they each pursued their dreams. So this woman, MJ Margraf, MJ's dream was to become a pilot. Well, the aviation industry is very male-dominated, so that was her first big challenge. And then learning to fly a plane and in bad weather was a big challenge. But not only does she eventually become a pilot, but she becomes a flight instructor. But not only does she become a flight instructor, but she's working with the International Space Station, and she devised some games with a group of high school students that are being played on the International Space Station. So Finding the Wow is a really, really cool book. It inspires a lot of women. And all of a sudden, she has a full-page feature in Oprah Magazine, and she was featured in an interview this past year on Hallmark TV. These are big placements. These are the kinds of things that can happen when a book comes out through a traditional publisher.
I have a quick question about that, Randy, because I know that there are women here in this community who are writing books, intend to write multiple books over the years, and yet are still, well, number one, I want to say, and I want to reiterate, because I know that there are probably women on the call that are like, oh, I don't have a following. I don't know what I would put on my speaker one page. You know, I need to like build up my YouTube, and that may be true, but I love what you said, that you can actually ahead of time collect what I call your team of cheerleaders, which are people who have lists, email lists, who are like, hey, I will promote your book. And you can count that total list as your following. So you can say I have 100,000 followers because I'm teamed up with these 10 people who have 10,000 people list size. Did I get that correctly?
Well, not only did you get it correct, but I actually have a templated letter that I give my clients to send out to everybody they know, asking them to support the book launch. So, awesome. And it's amazing. Like people who have a list size of maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, then all of a sudden they're getting, like sometimes even into the millions in terms of the leverage of other people's lists. So my
question, after kind of reiterating that,
yes,
is it possible to, like, does it make sense to maybe have the first book be self-published and then kind of use that? Because I know just having a book is a great way to get a doorway into speaking gigs, interviews, podcasts, radio shows, because you're now an author. And then once you've done that, then for your second book, then be like, hey, I've got this big following. People know who I am. I'm a known person. I'd love to know your thoughts about that strategy.
I have mixed thoughts about it because your sales numbers for your first book, for a self-published book, have to be very, very strong. And if they're not, all of a sudden you've killed the possibility to get a book deal. They're just it's not going to be forthcoming. Where it's so much easier for me to get a book deal for a first-time author.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And the vast majority of people whose books that I sell are for first-time authors. So like just in between last month, October, through this coming January, I have 5 books coming out. 2 came out last month that I mentioned, the Red Stocking Society, and what was the other one? The Red Mittens. They came out in October. But I also have, I just had another one come out called a Mind, Body, Spirit book called Structural Integration and Energy Medicine. And it's about the energetic work of Ida Rolf. That's never been revealed before. That's really cool. So that's with the big Mind, Body, Spirit publisher. I have a business book called Great Mondays, that's coming out in late December. That was a $15,000 advance from McGraw-Hill. We like that. 4 contracts were offered on that book. That's really cool. What else? I have a gift book that's just coming out called Life in a Word. It's a really fun gift book. So, I mean, I've got, just all these different books that are coming out, and there's more media opportunities for people who really want to grow a national platform. If you're a big vision kind of person, you definitely want to try for a traditional publisher. But on the other hand, I like self-publishing because you make more money per book. So my first book, Crappy to Happy, through a publisher, I made $1 a book. Sold 7,500 copies. Okay. My second book, The Power of Miracle Thinking, I make $15 a book on a $20 sale. I like that too. So, it really depends on your motivation. I like both methods. But I really do believe, like, I had 2 of my clients whose books wound up in FedEx office. Now, how many books does FedEx office carry on their shelves? 10, 15, 20, not more than that. And 2 of them were my clients' books. So FedEx office bought them in bulk because the publishers offer bulk sales. Sometimes they have strong foreign sales divisions as well. And if somebody's writing fiction, I'm going to be pitching your book. If you wanted me to, I'd be pitching to agents or publishers who shop to film. So there's a publisher right now who has picked up a lot of my clients' books, mostly fiction, some memoir, some other titles, who just recently did a deal with Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones. And Sophie is going to star in and direct a movie based on one of this publisher's books. So it's like, oh my God, I'm like, just one inch away from Sophie Turner. And I have a book right now, a memoir called Slave, The Human Trafficking Survivor Finds Life. Phenomenal book. Author Jabali Smith out of Oakland, who has the Well Child Foundation in Oakland. And he was a child slave. And it's a phenomenal book. And it came out this past year. And there are 3 major Hollywood movie producers considering it, which is very, very cool. So all of these incredible opportunities, what's that?
What was the name of that book again?
Slave, A Human Trafficking Survivor Finds Life. Amazing, amazing book.
Should we open it up for another question?
Yeah, please, before I rattle on more and more. Who can I help next? Christy. Unmute yourself, Christy.
Hi, good to see you, Randy.
Hi, it's been a long time.
Yeah. So, 19th year, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about what's trending. And I know that there are some new developments in what's happening with women rising. We just saw Pink Wave. We have the hashtag Me Too and hashtag Never Again. And I'm wondering, in terms of the empowerment of women, self-help theme, how strong that's coming forward to really support women in being in a much more empowered place.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was actually going to bring it up. The Random House continuity editor, when she told me that Random House is not looking for sci-fi, they are definitely focused on Me Too. That's their big, big push. But here's the issue with the Me Too book. I was at a conference for one of my clients is the CEO for Lisa Nichols. So Lisa Nichols, from The Secret. So I flew out to Atlanta last November, and they were doing a conference for new writers. So I had a booth there. And there were 400 women, maybe 3 men, but 400 women, and 395 of them or more were writing their abuse memoir. And so the market is glutted, and publishers aren't there. They're looking for Me Too, but you've got to be really, really careful in the positioning around it. There's got to be just some very unique focus to it, because otherwise it's too garden variety. And I'm just going to use like the kind of way their minds think. You know, there's got to be some very wonderful, unique positioning around the book for them to pick it up.
My other question is, are we still mainstream, or are we actually moving into a more metaphysical, open-minded, wholehearted? I know the mind, body, spirit stuff is really happening on some level, but like for example, Jessica is running business where we're actually using, and I love it. It is so nourishing and supportive. The idea of showing up as your priestess higher self as you're developing your business and working on your business and doing your business and eliminating the competition, moving into collaboration, all of those wonderful ideas that are they moving that direction? Or are they still mainstream?
Well, it's not a matter of moving. Every single publisher has what I would call their shelf and what they'll put on their shelves. So there are a few publishers who will fuse spirituality and business, but very few.
Yeah.
So for example, I could potentially take that kind of book to HarperCollins because I have connections with HarperCollins Leadership and HarperCollins Business. And HarperCollins has often done, you know, books that are business related. Once you're using the word priestess, though, I would probably take it directly to a mind, body, spirit publisher who I have in mind for that. But, you know, there aren't a whole lot that are merging those two.
Right. It's
It also-
interesting because I heard a statistic recently that the fastest growing movement in America in terms of spiritual movements is priestess mystery schools.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm connected, you know, I'm connected with so many mind, body, spirit publishers. A lot of times when people have written a mind, body, spirit book, the first thing they'll say to me is, I want Hay House. Can you get me Hay House?
Yeah.
And my response to that is Hay House has a 2-year production cycle. That's really long. From the time they say yes to a book till the time it's actually going to hit a bookshelf or be a book in your hands, that's a 2-year cycle. And so my response to that is, would it be okay if I got your project on the desk of the publisher of The Secret? Would that be okay? Yeah. And, you know, to other publishers, a typical publishing cycle is usually a year to a year and a half. That's from the time that a contract is offered. So if you want speed to market, self-publish. If you're looking, you know, for that longer career, that career piece, try for the traditional publisher, but it will take a lot more time. And the reason it takes time is because books go through many committees. So for example, even to get a book deal, let's say I pitched a book in May at Book Expo. And then by July, this is a real example, by July, this is not this past year, the previous year. By July, 6 of my clients out of the number, however many I pitched, actually got their projects to me. Because remember I said, you know, I can pitch a project based on an idea or, you know, something that's partially written. It doesn't matter as long as I pitch it right. So I had 6 clients in July. So Book Expo in May, 6 clients in July get me their projects. I send those projects out via email to each of these agents or publishers who asked for it. And in October, so July, they received it. I don't hear anything. July, August, September, into October. In October, 11 contracts came in on those 6 projects. So that's just a cycle because first it's going to go to an acquisition editor who has to read that proposal, fall in love with the book, and read it. And they're as busy as we are in our lives. They're busy. So they have to have their time where they're really reading through it. Then they're going to present it to their editorial team. Now the editorial team, because there's a number of acquisitions editors, and they're all looking at their projects, and they're going to be comparing your project with maybe 10 others or 15 others or 5 others or 20 others. I don't know. Depends on the size of the publisher. And they're trying to figure out which do they think is the best book content-wise. Then it's going to go, like, your book goes to that committee. So then it's going to go to something called the pub board. And the pub board is like the marketing people are going to look at your book versus the other ones. Which do they think is going to trend? Which do they think they're going to get their best bang for the buck with? Because their bottom line is they want money, right? So that's it. Which books do they think are going to be the biggest draw? And that book proposal is key to it. Now, Jessica, earlier you mentioned something about like a one-page speaker sheet. But a book proposal is typically 25 to 30 or more pages, because it has different sections to it. It's kind of like a business plan in which we're proving the sale of the book. I only covered like a few of the sections, but there are different sections to it. And I make the process actually pretty easy for people to do it.
I wanted to hop in to make sure, because we definitely have time for more questions. We're doing great on time. And I wanted to just give them a sense of how you can support women in this community. I know you've shared with me, like if people are wanting to.
Sure. I'd be happy to.
More, yeah.
You know, I like to work with people wherever they are in their project. So it could be in an idea phase, it could be partially written, it doesn't matter. We'll have a conversation based on where you are. So for example, if you haven't written anything yet, I'd love to do a positioning consultation. Let me hear your idea. We'll have an initial, free discussion, but then, if we really want to work on title and correct positioning, that's something I like to do. I have a write a book program, and it's specifically for people who want to tell their life story because you've overcome a challenge and you want to help someone else who's going through that challenge. Or you want to do like a how-to kind of book, 7 steps to, that kind of thing. So I offer a write a book program for that. I actually sell a copy of a book proposal that's 50 pages long. And most people I work with buy it when they want to do the book proposal because it's a proposal that I pitched to an agent. He offered the contract in 1 day and sold the book in 6 days. And so it's such a solid proposal, and it's the least expensive way that I can help somebody do a book proposal, because proposal writers are charging, up like $7,000 to $10,000 to write these proposals. I'll write them from scratch for less, but still, it's going into the thousands of dollars, and I have a $300 alternative. And so people are like, yes, and everybody uses it. Then I can come in on the back end, polish a proposal. And then I pitch to the agents and publishers. I pitch all year long via email, but most people want me to pitch in May just because I can reach so many agents and publishers, get immediate feedback from them, hear who's truly interested. And it's not so much a crapshoot. It's like people who are waiting to receive projects. So, I just have a variety of services. I send everybody a confidentiality agreement right up at the start and a rate sheet. I don't believe in surprises for anything. And the reason I did the confidentiality agreement, I automatically hold every project confidential, except some years ago I realized that when people come to me from LinkedIn, they get my professionality and they're ready to go. When people come to me from Facebook, they say, how do I know you're not a scammer? So I automatically started sending everybody confidentiality agreement, and people say, do I have to send this back to you? And I said, no, not really, because I am holding your project confidentially, but if it's important to you, then yes, please send it back, because I've already pre-signed it. So that's what I do. So that's just like, a quick overview. I also offer a free report if anybody's interested, just email me or email Jessica, whatever, however you're going to do that. And it's called Write the Right Book. And it takes people just through, a bunch of steps to see, is this, which is the right kind of book to write. It's for nonfiction. So.
I have a question.
Please.
I have an idea for a book with my family. I'm the baby of 7 children, and we've had quite a history in our family. And I'm trying to get each one of my siblings to write their own personal story and then do a 7-volume for each sibling and then have it kind of integrate with one another. I'm not sure in terms of getting rights to be able to write up their story, some of them won't write their story, but if I had recorded it for them, and would I just need to get permission from them?
I actually have a legal document. It's called a permissions waiver. And
Okay.
so, that's one of the things that, you actually have to have a permissions waiver,
Okay.
a signed waiver from them. The other thing that I have found with any, what I would call anthology style books, whether each person wrote their own volume or each had a chapter in your book, that kind of thing, depending on how you want to do it. Most people would probably be more inclined to contribute a chapter rather than do a whole book, and especially expecting 7 people to do a whole book. That seems incredibly daunting. So I actually have that format in my Write a Book program as well, how to do an anthology style book, the questions to ask, and to be consistent with the questions for each person. Now, the other thing that I've learned about anthology style books, and this is really important, so I'm really glad you brought it up since you're interested in doing that kind of book, is that getting people to write a story is like, it's like herding cats with a rake. It's impossible. I've participated in various anthology style books. Nobody will get their story in on time. Nobody, not maybe one person, and that one person will be me if I'm in the book. And many who say, oh yeah, I really want to do this, just never will get to it. And so if you want to do that kind of book, I highly encourage you to be the interviewer, record the interview.
Yeah, that's exactly
and like, there's like rev.com, R-E-V, rev.com. They transcribe videos for like $1 for recorded minute. It's the least expensive option I've ever seen.
Okay.
And they're very good. So that's who we recommend. Like in my company, we also ghostwrite. I have a team of editors and ghostwriters who work for me. They've all worked for publishers, or they've edited or ghostwritten many books that have sold to publishers. And so when we're ghostwriting, they're interviewing by phone, and then, as soon as we have the transcription, it goes to rev.com, and then they're working off transcription to create books. So rev.com is the source we've been using.
Super. Thank you so much.
Yes. And so I know in the chat you were saying something about like, where to get the right. Just ask for it. I'll just put my email in here. Just ask me for it. There we go. Do you have any other questions?
I don't write.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't write.
Could you say more about the, how did you put it? Like in something, it wasn't like interest in consideration possibility. Like, so for instance, right now I have started writing, but it's still taking, like, I don't know how formed it would be. And I do want to talk to you more one-on-one later, but I'm just more interested in if you can say a little bit more about that. So not having the book proposal yet necessarily.
I'm not clear on what your question is.
You were saying when you go to the book festival, to the book.
And so I'm getting promises of consideration.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So promise of consideration means this agent is really interested in a project.
Okay.
And so the way I pitch, I have my special secret sauce that I actually created along with Jill Lublin. Many of you may, or all of you, I'm not sure, may know Jill through Jessica. I know she's spoken for Fem Talks a number of times. Very dear friend of mine and colleague of 25 years. And she and I created something that no one else does that we know of. And so we go to the book expo every year together. We've pitched it every single year together for all these years. So she has her clients, I have my clients, sometimes we share clients, and I set up all the appointments with all the agents and publishers. And sometimes we're pitching at the same time. Sometimes we're going up in our separate directions. She's covering this one, I'm covering another one. So the two of us are a phenomenal tag team. And so what we created is more of what Jessica was talking about earlier, like a speaker sheet, like a one page. Actually, I'm the person who does it, but it's a double-sided, glossy, gorgeous design promo sheet for every project. And this is why we can pitch so many projects to so many people and get really phenomenal results, frankly. And so this pitch sheet, I send people a bunch of questions just to answer these questions. And I put together the text, I polish it, and I send it to people. And people usually go, oh my God, I'm that? My book is that? It's amazing. I mean, it's the reactions people get. It's really phenomenal. And so then, we just, we massage the text back and forth so it really represents the author in the way they want to be represented. It typically covers what is this book about? Here's the author's bio. So the front page is usually about graphics and what is this book about. The other side is the author's credibility, their bio, and their ability to promote it, and some testimonials. So that's kind of the basic format, but these promo sheets are gorgeous.
Nice.
So that's how we get these promises of consideration. So it's like they can look at one project. When they start asking questions, often what they're asked, the answers are on those sheets. Well, what's the size of the author's platform? Okay, that's on the back side. Then they turn it over. It's like, oh yeah, we're interested in this.
Gotcha. Great. I just wanted to have a more of a working sense of what that looked like,
Yes.
So.
Yes. And so Jill and I were sitting with a top agent at the Book Expo, and the agent said, okay, Randy, what do you got for me this year? And I held up one of these promo sheets. 3-word pitch resulted in a 6-figure book deal in a bidding war between Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, and McGraw-Hill.
Yeah.
So I held up that promo sheet. I wonder if I have a piece of paper I can demonstrate with. Let me just, yeah, I do. Grab something. So, so I held up this promo sheet and I went like this. I smell money! The agent's eyes went like, what do you got for me? What do you got for me? And, I gave her that book, that little promo sheet. 3 words, I smell money, resulted in a 6-figure book deal.
Nice.
My strongest sales pitch ever, 3 words. And so when I'm pitching, I'm always looking for, like, what is the right angle to pitch this book? It's either this is the first book too, or it's about the author's platform.
Yeah.
And so I'll lead with whatever I think is like, what am I going to get? How can I get an author to raise a publisher or agent to raise their eyebrow? What is it that I can say?
Mm-hmm.
So there's always some way to pitch it that's so strong.
Yeah. Well, I really this is the second time I've gotten to, be with you on one of these calls. And I just really appreciate how I really feel how you're bridging, because as a writer, it's like, I want it to be out there, but all the language and all the everything, and you're really holding the worth and you understand where they're coming from. So there's really this marriage that you're holding. And I just want to appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's very exciting and it's very palpable. And it's like, oh yes, someone on my side who gets it.
Yeah. Who not only gets it, but has the connections.
Yes, all of it.
And so when I'm initially speaking with somebody, let's say, you call me and we're just speaking about your project, I'm learning about it. The ticker tape in my mind is already going and I already know where I'm going to pitch it.
Yeah.
I just do. Because I know, like, who's interested in what, who's buying what. Yeah. I have a contract that's being negotiated right now. I mean, today and yesterday, it's being negotiated right now with a publisher, and it's for Kat. I'll get to you in a second, so thank you. So I see you. And it's a book, and I have permission from the author to talk about it. And it's called Addicted to Perfect, and it's a memoir related to Adderall, because Adderall on college campuses right now is huge. And so I had a publisher contact me last month based just on that double-sided promo sheet. We haven't even written a book proposal yet. And just based on that promo sheet, and she said, I want to buy this book. I need to see some samples of the writing. The author had only written like 1 or 2 chapters. We made sure it was edited, it was polished. I sent it off to the publisher, and the contract's being negotiated, and it's going back and forth right now. So, there should be hopefully a deal on that within the next week, which is very, very cool.
Super exciting. Thank you. That was.
Yeah. But it's so out of the box to get a a publishing deal based on a double-sided promo sheet, but that also shows the power of it as well.
Yeah.
So Kat, you would ask a question, then Christy, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I have to run really quick, but I wanted
Okay.
to ask how, like, when somebody gets a deal picked up, like, and let's say it's like a big national thing, like that 6-figure deal or even something smaller, like how dramatically does the author's life need to change to accommodate how this changes? Like, do they have to quit their day job? Do they have to suddenly like be going around the country 24/7? Like,
Never quit
what
your day
changes?
job.
Okay, so like what changes for
Do
people?
not
Like
do that.
how does
Well,
it
you'll have to
affect
fit
them?
you'll have to fit your publicity into your life the way it is now. So if you're not used to being up in front of people, there is a big change that happened. It happened for me when I wrote Crappy to Happy. I wasn't in front of audiences before then. I had to build confidence and comfortability and build up my stories and my talks, and it was just a process. What I highly recommend is that you start with podcasts or radio interviews. The reason being is that you can write out a list of interview questions for someone to ask you or to use as a guide to guide conversation. But the cool thing about radio is that they don't visibly see you. So you write out, you duplicate the same questions for yourself, but you write out your answers on your sheet. So you're going to start getting more comfortable speaking about your topic. So that's one thing. Another thing that I recommend is that most people are not going to go out and do major book tours. Publishers typically won't support them financially unless the author is already well known. I like what I call captive audiences. And a captive audience, depending on your target market, is not really a bookstore, because people can come and go out of a bookstore. But a church is a captive audience. I just gave a sermon this past week for a Unity church, in my area. And so there's 40 people in that audience. That's a captive audience. A business organization, Fem Talks would be a captive audience, like the Monday evening programs that Jessica does, or a business luncheon. In Alameda, there's Successful Thinkers. That's a wonderful luncheon to attend. So how your life changes is really going to depend on you and the vision that and the dream you're holding for yourself. Like, how big do you want to play in the world? And typically it doesn't happen overnight, so you don't have to worry about it. It'll grow. Like, you may know Carolyn Mace, like a major New York Times author. And I interviewed her right when Anatomy of the Spirit came out. And I had an hour-and-a-half lunch with Carolyn Mace, which was awesome. And she said, Randy, it took me 14 years to become famous overnight. And I love that. You'll never be given more than you can handle. It's a process. Oprah's not calling this week. So you're going to build and build and build. And you build your comfortability. And as you're becoming more comfortable and, your speaking becomes easier and easier, and then new doors will open for you. But start with comfort. Like I said, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or blogging, go to the place that feels like comfort first. Like Jessica is very much about self-care. We started this whole session with self-care, which frankly no one else does, which is very, very cool, Jessica. And so, you want to take care of yourself in this process too. And you can move into things gently. And you can also challenge yourself or allow yourself to take risks as well.
Thank you so much, Randy. This is super, super helpful. We're going to take one more question. I saw Christy's hand go up.
Christy's hand was up, so.
Yeah.
So if somebody else has a question, that's fine. I'll segue. But my question has to do with the myth, or is it a myth, that book publishing is dying in the traditional sense of we're going to a soundbite world, we're going to a digital audio, video, YouTube world. So are people going to still be reading books? Are books going to paper books still going to be published? Are we seeing a drop in that? Is that what's happening in that world on overall?
I think that's a really great question. What I'm seeing is that there are certain publishers, for example, source books. I love source books. I sold my first book to source books for Eleanor Stutz, who used to be in the Bay Area. Some of you may know her. She wrote a book called Nice Girls Do Get the Sale. And that book came out like maybe in like 18 years ago, something like that, 17 or 18 years ago. And that book is still selling, and now it's in the second edition. And source books they do a lot of New York Times bestsellers, and they've been consistently in the black. When other publishers were going out of business, things were, closing down, source books continues to be in the black. And why is that? Because they're very selective about what they take, and they're looking at what is trending. And so there are people who love that digital file or the Kindle or Nook or whatever. And then there are other people, I hear so many people say, I want to hold the book in my hand. So yes, we are in a soundbite world. One of the things that I encourage people to do, if it's in your comfort zone, is to do something that's digital as well. So there's a digital tie-in to your book. Multimedia is hot. So those books, tend to do well if there's a multimedia component to them, if it's appropriate for it. So I think it's more about what's trending, what's really, really important. So I would say, yes, a number of small publishers have gone out, and a lot of bookstores the smaller ones have gone out. But then again, there are certain publishers who are doing extremely well.
Yeah. Well, I would think that because of the amount of video that people are looking at, that they are hungry for content, and keeping content coming fast and furious with what's interesting and provocative and going to really grab people's, like, oh my God, like Jessica says, you lean into that one. You're just like, whoa, what is that?
Or one of the things you can do digitally with a book is create some memes with, some really pretty artwork or some graphic you grab for free off of like iStock Photo. And that's a good resource. The letter iStockphoto.com has a lot of free images you can use. And you just, create a quote from your book with a link to it underneath it or to your website, and try to get some of those going viral. I think that's really, really important. Like in Crappy to Happy, one of my strongest quotes in that book is, sorrow digs the well and joy fills it. It's a great meme. And, and so that's, one of the ones that's been circulating out there in the world.
Well, this is beautiful. It's really lovely to see some, it looks like Denise has a question. What does digital tie-in mean in ebook?
Oh, well, an ebook is digital. A publisher, when they offer a deal on a book, don't have the ebook version up there, because now you're in competition with a publisher, and they're actually going to want to, there are a bunch, let me rephrase that question. There's a bunch of, they're called subsidiary rights. There's audiobook rights, there's electronic rights, there's film rights, there's, just a number of rights, article rights. They're all negotiated in the contract. So you don't want to come out with an ebook that's separate. I mean, the same content, but there might be a report that's tied to an ebook, that kind of thing, or a video that's tied to it, and there's some kind of link in the book, or an appendix of resources that's tied to it. Things like that. Does that answer that question? So
yeah, that's
you get it. Good. Good.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. I love that you're part of this community. I love that I can call on you to teach us. Randy's teaching a couple more trainings with us in 2019, so be on the lookout for those. And I recommend, what I love about Randy is like you're just so just straightforward, grounded, centered. When I've reached out to you, I never felt pressured or pushed in any way. You just, it's a wonderful wealth of information and support.
Yes.
So I definitely want to encourage women to, without any fear, no fear, to connect with Randy. And
but you know what, Jessica, you can connect with your fear as well. I mean, if you want to. Just show
hold
up
space
however
for
you
it.
show up. It's okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to just find out if you want to contact me, just email me. We'll just set up a time. I'd love to hear what you're working on and just give you some feedback. Like I tell people the most valuable thing I can give you is my time. So please just call me. Let's just have a brief conversation if you'd like, and I'll hear what your idea or what you're working on, and I'll just give you some direct feedback.
Thank you. That's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
you're very welcome. And
I'll include your contact information. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say one statement in closing, and say hi to Terry Moon. Just jumped on. Hi, Terry. We go back to the 80s, by the way, Terry and I. I love to say that a book is more than words on a page. It's your dream, and I get to help you birth your dream. And to me, that's what brings me the huge joy. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll make sure to include your website, the links that you shared, your email, when this video is posted in the Wisdom Vault as well. So
cool.
Yeah,
and anybody wants my Write a Book program, just email me.
Awesome. Yay.
I mean, the Write the Right Book. Write the Right Book report.
Yeah, the program is awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much, Randy. So much love to you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So nice to see your beautiful faces.
Great.
Mwah.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.